This episode discovered the real reason why people deny Allah.
Oh, great. The real reason why I deny Allah couldn't be because of the lack of evidence and the fact that I don't want to just take your word for it or the word of your book that supposedly he wrote, which has a lot of errors in it when concerned with reality. But please do, Muslim man, London Dawa. I want to know why I really just deny God. Oh, wait, sorry, Allah. It's easy to get those mixed up. I love how his logo there is a sort of like circuitry heart, and it says thought revolution. Last time I checked, you don't think with your heart. It's just an organ that pumps blood. But I guess maybe he's talking more about the more poetic thinking from the heart. I guess religious people like to do that a lot.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers, sisters, friends, and everybody else watching. Welcome to Thought Revolution. In this episode, we're going to be looking at the 6th chapter of the Quran, verse 111. See, in this verse, God shows us or highlights one of the main reasons why people deny Him. One
of the main reasons why people deny Allah. One, he's about as comparable to Harry Potter as you can get. He's a mythical guy in a book, and he does a lot of magical things, and through the course of the book, he teaches you some life lessons. Sounds like Harry Potter. Now remember, guys, do not go running face first into that 7 3/4 or whatever platform. That is the biggest moral thing that I learned from Harry Potter. And I actually, I was told that I was wrong about the 7 3/4. It's actually 9 3/4.
People reject Him, and Allah shows us that it's not for rational reasons. It's not for based on evidence. It's not because they can't see God. See, Allah says even if He had sent down the angels to these people and they could see the angels and they had the message, the Quran with them, or the dead started to speak to them even.
Okay, I have to admit that if Allah, I don't know how we would be able to tell if He's Allah or not, but if Allah comes down, tells us, oh, hey, look, guys, I'm Allah. I'm the one that told you to go and marry little kids and such. That's what that one prophet did, Muhammad. He also invented thigh-ing. Never mind. You don't want to know about that. Anyways, if He came down and He had the dead rise in front of me and talk to me, I think that would be pretty compelling evidence for me to believe that this guy has something weird about him, and I mean he could be this Allah. I don't know how we would really describe a deity, but I don't see where this guy is going with this, but let's find out.
For all of His creation together and put them in front of these people, they will still deny in Allah unless Allah willed, and these people of this are ignorant. See, the reality is, brothers and sisters, that most atheists are not denying God based on rational reasons.
Oh no, not rational reasons. What the fuck is that, honey?
Majority of the cases. And I've seen this through experience. I've spoken to many atheists, and we get to the point in the discussion where they can't defend their position rationally anymore. But at that point, what do? They take reason and rationality and they put it in the bin. Oh, well, there's a chance.
Okay, well, yeah, there is a chance. But, you're committing a lot of fallacies here in order to get to this point. First off, you're kind of begging the question here with thinking that God already exists. See, this is what you call presuppositionalism. If you don't know about presuppositionalism, basically they start from God exists, and then they go from there. And this is pretty fallacious in that they can't prove that God exists. If you ask for proof from somebody like this guy, he will just give you his holy book, and that's it. That's his proof for his God. So if I start off from the position of Harry Potter is real, and if you deny Harry Potter's existence, then you're denying him for irrational reasons, because I say he's real. That's fucked up logic and reasoning. You can't just start from the assumption and then work your way forward. You have to prove your assumption first. Like, for instance, with mathematical proofs, there are whole fucking books on just like one fucking proof. It's how we know things to be true. It's how we can say something like an assumption is true because we can refer to how it was proven to be true. But this guy wants to start from the presupposition of God exists. And also, I'd like to point out that what he's describing here not only applies to atheists, it also applies to everybody that's not a Muslim. So there's a bit of a false dichotomy here in that he's acting like it's Muslims versus atheists, unless you want to define deny as being not only denying his existence, but denying him as a deity and not worshiping him. Then he would be including everybody, but labeling everybody as an atheist. So you take your pick here. Let me know down below which pick you took.
And they play the chance card. There's a chance this could happen like this, or there's a chance that this can happen like this. And I asked them, well, why don't you be consistent? Why don't you play that chance card in the rest of your life? Why don't you say, well, there's a chance if I blindfold myself today and drive my kids to school, everything will be fine?
Because there, Amid, that is called a false analogy. For one thing, you're totally disregarding the fact that if I blindfold myself and I take my son to school, I'm more than likely going to run into something and possibly get us killed. The ramifications of that is very great and immediate. And I don't want to kill my son. I don't want to chance that. I take every precaution that I can when I have my son in the car. But to compare that to this God question, you're telling me that everybody that doesn't think that Allah is God is basically blindfolding themselves and driving themselves and their family into certain death. Which, the only person here that agrees with that in this particular conversation is you. You're presupposing that, that God exists, that heaven exists, and hell exists, and that you're going to be punished if you don't believe. You're starting from that position. If I started from the position that, if you believed in Allah, then you're definitely going to hell, like a lot of Christians do, as well as other religions, then you would be on the path to hell. You would actually be blindfolding yourselves and driving yourselves off a fucking cliff.
Why do you do that?
Well, I don't do it because they're not analogous. It's a false equivalence, and I should know this because I fucked up last week.
They're not consistent. They won't do that. Only when it comes to God, they will reject even reason and rationality to deny his existence. And this is a problem. Allah, not only in this verse, but in other verses in the Quran, God highlights this. He, for example, tells us in another part of the Quran that even if we had sent down, scripture to them written on parchment, and they felt it with their own hands, they will still deny it. They will say that this is magic.
Actually, no. We would say that it's fucking printers and shit, man. I mean, honestly, if a piece of paper fell from the sky, I know a lot of people would be like, oh, it's magic. It's gold. I mean, if you think about it, Moses, God took out his dick and, pretty much wrote with lightning on a tablet, which I don't know what kind of STD that is that God, shoots lightning out of his dick, but you can't prove that I'm wrong about that. You don't know if he took out his dick in the clouds and wrote on the fucking stone. You also don't know if Allah is actually the one that threw down that paper. You say magic, but yet you will readily go and call science magic when it concerns the beginning of the universe. It just seems to me like you're presupposing a lot of things and you're arguing from a straw man position. I'm betting you're going to make at least one straw man in this.
God says in another part, if we had opened up the doorway to the heavens and they started to ascend through it, and they will look around, they see everything around them, yet they will say that this is magic. We've been bewildered. Our eyes are not seeing the reality. Anything to deny. It's not about physical things we can tell by this. It's not because they don't have evidence or good reasons.
Actually, it is because we don't have evidence or good reasons. What you're arguing right here says, hey, don't be skeptical, just believe everything that you read. That sounds a lot like Republicans in the 2016 election season, as well as Democrats. I don't want to single out Republicans. Democrats have done it too. I mean, it's just gullible people in general, okay? They read headlines and they automatically believe it. What you're saying is, hey, read this headline that I'm giving you and automatically believe it, or else
you're gonna burn in hell forever.
Listen, if I die and I get up to heaven, right, and I look around and I see angels and shit that are just pooping out ice cream nuggets everywhere, I would think that I'm hallucinating or something, sure. But when the hallucination doesn't wear off and it's so vivid, I mean, what do you do in a dream? Don't you just kind of go with the flow with it? Or I know me, sometimes I'm like, hey, this is a dream, because obviously I wouldn't stand up in front of a classroom in my underwear and, recite Shakespeare. What I'm pointing out here is is that if you gave good evidence and you showed somebody where, they could feel it, they could touch it, and they can test it, I would accept that I was wrong, and I would believe that there was indeed a heaven because I seem to have been there. Now, I don't want you to confuse this with near-death experiences. Near-death experiences are completely opposite to what we're talking about here, because what near-death experiences are is your brain is dying, and it's pretty much just a survival technique that your brain has learned in order to cope with death. Seeing the bright light at the end of the tunnel, meeting Jesus, any of those things are ways that your brain can cope with death. And you can't sit there and tell me, oh, I was completely brain dead and I saw Jesus. There's no way to tell if you saw that while you were brain dead or while you were coming out of your coma, because you're obviously speaking, you're obviously here. You can't tell me you know exactly when you had that, because this shit happens like that. It happens in an instant. But getting back to his point here, it's not irrational to be skeptical, okay?
It's because they don't want to believe in God. It's an emotional issue. And I've seen this many times. You can speak to atheists. Ask them a very simple question, and I'll ask any atheist watching this right now. If I was to give you conclusive proof and evidence for God's existence, would you then worship him?
No, I fucking wouldn't. Not even a little bit. Just because he exists doesn't mean the motherfucker gets my worship. I don't know what kind of power he drains from my worship. Kind of seems like a demon, if you really ask me. I think that was a demon on Supernatural at one time. You worship him, and then all of a sudden he gets so much power because people worship him. So are you telling me that Allah is a demon that's up there and he stars on the show Supernatural a lot? No, obviously that's not what you're telling me. I'm not denying God or denying Allah because I don't want to believe in him. I just simply don't believe in the motherfucker. I don't see any evidence that would convince me otherwise. I'm completely open to the evidence. So what this leads me to believe is that you're presenting a straw man here of an atheist that says that he doesn't believe in God, says he doesn't want to believe in God, and is reacting from an emotional position. Not saying that those atheists don't exist, but you're talking as if all atheists do this. And mind you, it's not just like people that don't believe in God, it's people that believe in gods other than yours as well. So don't forget that. It's still a false dichotomy when you ask questions like these. It's also begging the question because you're about to flip it on its head.
That's the question. And most of the time, what I've seen from experience, they will say, no, we wouldn't worship him. And this clearly shows that their problem is an emotional problem. It's not a rational problem.
It's not a problem at all to be skeptical. And no, he says that if I gave you evidence for God's existence, would you then worship him? And so then he turns it into a denial of worshiping his particular God. While again, this would apply to many more, religions out there, and not just the position of atheism, but it would apply to Christians as well. If I gave you evidence of Allah's existence, would you worship Allah instead of Yahweh? All the Christians would be like, nope, my God is the real God, and he is the only God. Okay. That's the response that you would get. So you're still making this false dichotomy. You're also begging the question because you're asking the question knowing the answer. Because if we're atheists, we're more likely to say, yeah, sure, God exists, which would no longer make us atheists, I guess. But then you're asking us to worship him. And in no way does the position of atheism imply that we would indeed worship such a God. So nice going on the flipping it on its head and doing the begging the question pretty much the entire video. What else you got for me?
And this clearly shows that their problem is an emotional problem. It's not a rational problem.
It's still not an emotional problem. It's most definitely a rational problem, because you could rationally say that, any God that would be like Allah, for instance, doesn't deserve my worship. And you would be perfectly reasonable in saying that, considering the content of the Quran.
I mean, think about it. The best argument that they put up against God, which is a very weak argument, is the problem of evil.
I will agree that the problem of evil is a weak argument. But you're creating a straw man by saying that atheists, that this is their best argument. Like, that's a complete straw man, because we have so many better arguments against a God existing. Like the origin of the Quran and how that came to be. be. Like, that's a good reason to doubt the existence of Allah. How about all of the shit in the book that the Quran gets wrong about this world in general? So, there are plenty of reasons to doubt the existence of God, and there are plenty of reasons not to worship such a deity.
So that says something in itself. So I ask anyone sincere watching this right now, anyone looking, is to really be careful and ask themselves the question, are they rejecting or denying God's existence because they don't have good reasons to believe in it?
Okay, but that's not what you've asked here. You've not asked this particular question. Like, you haven't asked about whether or not we'll believe in God's existence. You've asked whether or not we'll worship that God. That's what you've asked here. You made it pretty clear earlier. I mean, I think so, right? I mean, he said it pretty out loud, right? Okay, just making sure. I got my secretary over here.
Or is it because they have some other internal emotional problem that maybe is that they don't want to worship God or turn to Him or submit to Him?
Oh, okay, and he has this particular reasoning for it because of the fact that he thinks that everybody already believes that a God exists. That's one of the banes of presuppositionalism. You're saying that everybody already knows God exists, but you're denying Him because you don't want to believe that He exists or you don't want to worship Him. So they turn it into an emotional thing, like he's saying here, which, like, I'll just go back to before. It's a fallacy of presuppositionalism. Now, that's not an actual fallacy or class of fallacies or anything. It's more or less like a phrase that encompasses just bad argumentation. So I think that this guy just desperately wants to completely deny the position of atheists and start off from the position that, oh, you believe in God and you're choosing not to believe in Him or worship Him, which sounds like a lot of other assholes out there. Well, I'm an asshole too. I'm just the good kind.
So I thank you guys for watching. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget, look at the seventh sun through the third circle of the fifth triumvirate. See y'all later.